Welcome to the beginning of a very long project. We're going to go through the story of Mushoku Tensei, or Jobless Reincarnation, and compare the anime with the light novel. If you've seen my ReZero series, this is going to be pretty much the same. I'm going to focus on the anime story-wise and then bring up the differences between it and the light novel as they come up. Now, I haven't read the light novel, I've only seen the anime so far. So, unlike ReZero, I'm kind of coming into this blind, which I'm sure will work out great. I am aware that there is a manga and web novel, but I'm not going to be including those in for this. Partly because I ain't got time for all that, and partly because I've heard the web novel is pretty close to the light novel, and the manga is just the story in manga form. So if you disagree and think that I should be including those, then you can go yell at the random people on the internet for spreading lies. Good luck finding them. I am separating out the story by the arcs in the wiki. My amazing art skills haven't improved any whatsoever. So here's a quick view of how the arcs line up with the anime and the light novel. It's really nice that the light novel are pretty much one book for each arc, at least for the early ones. It's still going to take me more than one video for each arc, though. So that's the general idea, and we're just going to hope that this goes well. So let's get to the story. He walks down the street in the rain. He was a 34-year-old man with no job and nowhere to live. It's the first time out of his house in years, and it wasn't by choice. His siblings beat the shit out of him and kicked him out. What the hell had I even done wrong? All I did was skip out on her parents' funeral so I could spank it to uncensored lolly porn. Did I mention this wasn't for kids? I feel like I should have had this warning a little sooner than this. Also, I am not a voice actor. I'm going to do the best that I can, but my best is not going to be good. So set your expectations low. Nowhere to go, no idea what to do. He continued to walk. He hears arguing and finds three high schoolers, a boy and a girl yelling at each other, with another boy in the middle trying to calm them down. The scene brought up good and bad memories. The childhood friend he liked hanging out with, back when things were easy, when he was smart enough to not have to try. The high school bullies that beat him up, stripped him naked, and spread pictures of his dick around school, the reason he became a shut-in. He snaps back to the present when he notices a truck speeding towards the kids. The driver is asleep at the wheel. He tries to yell, but nothing comes out. He hasn't raised his voice in so long. That combined with the possible broken rib from his cold rain and the cold rain sound he tried to make. His legs are slow to react, but he manages to get them going. Over a decade of not exercising and barely moving has left him out of shape and sluggish. He grabs the boy closest to him and throws him back. He's basically just switched places with the high schooler. At this point, it's too late to get the others. If only he was faster. If only he had exercised more. If only he had done more with his life. The truck hits the three of them. If that were all, it's possible the man may have lived, but the truck kept going, running him over completely. The man's consciousness fades as he passes away. We're starting off with differences here. This is how the light novel starts. We get a bunch of backstory for... Wait. He doesn't even get a name. We get backstory for this random-ass guy. Basically, he was a decently smart kid, and then he got lazy, and then his grades fell, and then he ended up at the worst junior high, and then he decided to stand up to a bully, and it didn't go well, which is why he is now a shut-in. The anime skips over all of this and just gives a quick opening of him after he's been hit by the car and as he's dying. They do point out that he was trying to save the high schoolers and that he's been a shut-in for 20 years. The rest of the info comes later. On a writing note, the light novel comes off a little rambly here. He spends far too long talking about his childhood friend, and any other time I would say it's too much of a tangent. But here, honestly, it fits far too well. He's just been kicked out of his house. His life is in shambles, and instead of trying to figure out a solution for what to do next, his mind instinctively runs from the problem. And I don't know if it was done on purpose or not, but it was done really well. A blinding light causes him to close his eyes. When he opens them again, he finds himself looking up at complete strangers, a man and a woman. Quick note here, he sees the two people in front of him, but he also hears another woman, so he knows that there are three people in the room. He can't understand what they're saying at all. Maybe his hearing was affected by the accident. I have to point this out. The anime actually has them speak a different language that he doesn't understand, and it's such a good touch, and it is not in the light novel. The man proceeds to pick him up. Seriously? I weigh over 100 kilos. How could he lift me that easily? Maybe I've lost some weight after being stuck in a coma for a few weeks? The man hands him over to the woman and lays him on her lap, her barely covered chest in his view. If you leave yourself that open, I might have to cop a feel. What? He raises his arms, and to his surprise, they are extremely tiny. Reality finally hits him when he sees his body. He was a baby. He tries to speak, but all that comes out are random sounds. Surprisingly, he is less creepy in the light novel. I mean, here, at this moment, I can't say for the rest of the story. But at the least he doesn't try to grab some random woman's boobs. But he does comment that she looks hot, and I'm not gonna fault him for that. It looks like I got reincarnated. Paul and Zenith. In their mid-20s, I'd guess. I'm 34, so they're practically kids to me. Still, getting to suck on a hottie's tits for free rules. It doesn't turn me on, though. Maybe because she's my mom. It's another line that's not in the light novel. The anime really makes him seem more obsessed with sex this early in the story. I go back and forth on whether I think this is a good change or not. Overall, I think it will help with showing character growth, but I guess we'll see if my mind changes in the future. The light novel points out that a month has passed, and we haven't got the parents' names just yet. And that makes more sense to me since he doesn't understand their language. There's no way he's going to be able to pick out what their names are between all the gibberish that he hears. Instead of talking about boobs, he instead comments that they're poor because they don't have electricity. But they also have a maid, so he's not really sure what to make about that. I mean, he does make all of these comments in the anime a little later, so I guess they just decided to switch all this around. I guess my name's Rudius. After 6 months, I've gotten a pretty good grip on the language. Maybe it's because I'm young, but I feel like I learn weirdly fast. It's an interesting concept. I mean, it is easier to learn a new language when you're younger, but I think that's because it's easier for your neurons to make connections. But I don't know. I'm not a brain expert. What makes it interesting is that he already has memories, which in our reality would mean that those connections were already made, which would negate any learning advantage he would have. But, I mean, it's fantasy. They can take some liberties. And this is just an observation. I'm not complaining or anything. At this point in the light novel, he comes to the conclusion that his family is rich. They live in a big 2-story house with 5 bedrooms and a maid. So they just live out in the country with no electricity. Rudis climbs up to a window to look outside. What a view. I've seen photos like this. Is this Europe like I thought? A sound catches his attention. His dad is out front, swinging a sword. What's he doing? Oh shit! Rudius loses his footing and falls backwards with a loud crash. Zenith and Lilia, the maid, rush to check on him. Despite falling and hitting his head, he still isn't crying. Zenith is worried. She sits him down, places her hand on his head. Healing. A glow appears, and the pain fades away. This isn't Earth. It's another world. I'm not trying to become some isekai savant or anything. It just happens to be the animes that I want to talk a lot about. This is a typical isekai world with swords and magic, and it's really not that surprising. I mean, it's called jobless reincarnation. So Rudius asks, did the fighter marry the cleric? And yeah, that's pretty much what happened. At first he thinks his mom and dad are nerds. I mean, his dad's some weeb outside swinging a sword, and his mom's inside trying to do some weird chanting to try to make him feel better. Until he realizes what's actually happening. Also, that's probably how I'm going to handle the spells from now on. I'm not going to repeat everything they say every single time they cast a spell. I'm just going to say the spell name and keep it simple. So from now on, most of the time, when I say the spell name, that means they went through the entire incantation. His lack of crying comes up a lot, and it makes sense that he doesn't cry. I mean, a kid scraping their knee or something and crying isn't really that big of a deal, but if a 30-year-old is out here crying when they scrape their knee, then that's a little weird. But if a kid never cries, then something else could be wrong, and that's what his parents think. In the light novel, he doesn't come to the isekai conclusion after seeing magic. He waits and hears about other countries first, and then decides that he's not on Earth. And part of me thinks that that is fucking stupid. If I start seeing magic, I'm at the very least going to assume that I'm not on Earth anymore. But I guess it isn't out of the question that he is in like the distant future or something, at which point the country names could be different. So yeah, I'm back to this being stupid. So here the light novel goes into Lilia's backstory, or some of her backstory. She used to be a maid for the royal family, like a maid slash guard for the princess. Let's look at the map. Here is the world of Mushoku Tensei. I just grabbed the only colored map on the wiki. And this is a bit much. Let's zoom in. So this is the Azura Kingdom. I think that's how you say it. I'm not completely sure though. So Rudy is somewhere around here, somewhere in this circle. I'm not really sure the exact spot. And then Lilia was working at the capital. So she wasn't that far, but this is still a decent distance away. She's a good maid, but a mediocre fighter. An assassin attacked the princess, and Lilia managed to stop them, but she got hurt in the process. Basically, she got cut, and it got poisoned, and now she can't run. At that point, she couldn't really do her job, so they removed her. And the fact that she wasn't silently executed made her think that she was put into that position to fail. Someone wanted to execute the princess and didn't think that Lilia was going to be able to protect her. And I've got a feeling that's going to come back up later. Anyway, she left, went north, spent about a month looking for a job, and then she found Paul's ad. She knew him when they were younger. They apparently trained with the sword at the same place for a little bit, and that's why she's working there now. She got there right before Rudius was born, and she is not a big fan of his. I mean, there is a lot about him that is weird. He's a kid that never cries, and he disappears the second you look away from him. But worst off, he has a creepy smile, and he would constantly stare at her boobs. And it reminds her of a bald cabinet member that she saw back at the Capitol. And that is another thing that's probably going to come back up later. She was kind of scared of Rudius, to the point that she tried to do an exorcism. Well, I guess it's probably closer to like a warding spell, ritual kind of thing, but she thought that he was possessed, so she was trying to fix it. She was kind of scared of Rudius, to the point that she tried to do an exorcism. Well, I guess it's probably closer to like a warding spell, ritual kind of thing, but she thought that he was possessed, so she was trying to fix it. And then the magic incident happened, and he became more interested in reading, or pretending to read from her perspective. He would speak out loud in Japanese, and she took it as kind of kid babble, which was weird, but nowhere near as creepy. So she decided just to let it go and avoid him as much as she could. The anime doesn't bring all this up just yet. It's shown a little later, and I'll point it out when it comes up. Magic. Now that's a word that can get even a monkey excited. I want to try it out myself, ASAP. He makes his way upstairs and finds a chest. Due to his small size, it takes some effort, but he eventually gets it open. Inside are books. There are only 5 books in the house. Either books are expensive in this world, or Paul and Zenith aren't big readers. The letters are unrecognizable. I can't read it. I'll have to learn to read first. I do like how realistic this story is. Well, more realistic than most isekais. He has to learn everything. It's a new world, a new body, a new language, a new everything. And I like stories that show the growth process. And this is a good piece of the puzzle. Another year passes. Rudius is around 2 years old now. Even with just 5 books, with the help of Paul reading to me sometimes, I can more or less read now. The light novel actually gives us the names of the 5 books. Wandering the World, the reference guide to the countries of the world. The Ecology and Weaknesses of Phytoian Monsters, which is the monsters where they live. A textbook of magic, which has the basics of magic. The Legend of Pergius. I'm not sure if that's how you're supposed to say that name, but oh well. And last, The Three Swordsmen and the Labyrinth. So mostly books that a kid wouldn't find interesting. Except for maybe the last two. The Magic Manual. There are two ways to activate magic: incantations and magic circles. Seems like a deep system, but I'm more concerned that, according to this, your magic power is basically set in stone at birth. I'm worried. I doubt my genes are going to put in much work. He clearly doesn't know his parents if he thinks that. I mean, he has seen his dad practice with a sword and seen his mom do magic. So as far as genes go, he's not doing too bad. That's all it's said in the anime. The light novel gives a little more info, and I'll try to sum this up. So there are three types of magic: attacking, healing, and summoning. And you can pretty much guess what each one does. You need basically mana in order to cast spells, and that could come from within you or from a magic item. So it is possible to cast spells just using magic items, which is what a lot of mages do since they don't have a huge mana pool. Incantations used to take minutes. They used to take so long. But someone managed to shorten them to 5 seconds at the shortest. And that's for attack magic. I would imagine healing magic is pretty close to that. Summoning magic, still, it's easier to use magic circles. Well, I guess I'll give it a shot. He gets up and reads from the book. Mana flows through his body as water forms in his hand. Water ball. Water floats in the air for a second before falling on the floor. After cleaning it up, Rudius closes his eyes and tries again. Concentrate. Picture it over and over in your head. Then actually do it. Once again, mana flows through him, creating a ball of water. When he opens his eyes, the shock causes him to fall down and water splashes on him. Well, I didn't do the incantation yet. Suddenly, he feels dizzy. Is this all the mana I've got? With his mana completely drained, he passes out. He pissed himself. Or at least it looks that way in the anime because the water falls on him. But in the light novel, I'm pretty sure he actually does it. So the anime is trying to be nice to him and everything and make it look like it's an actual accident from the looks of it because the water falls on him and it's not him doing it. But in the light novel, they just straight up like, no, he actually does it. The events are slightly different in the light novel. He casts one spell with the incantation and then another without it, and they both just kind of splash on the ground. He doesn't actually pass out until he tries for the third time. He describes it as feeling like blood flowing through your body and then coming out of your hand, which blood already kind of goes through your body, so it's maybe not the best explanation. It's like all of the blood in your body pooling into your hand and then seeping out. Maybe that's a better explanation, hopefully. What's interesting is, in the anime, casting without saying anything doesn't really come up. It's just completely ignored. But it does come up in the light novel. The most proficient of wizards, the book said, could cast spells without incanting at all, or drastically reduce the incanting time at the very least. So while the anime makes it seem like casting without saying anything is virtually unheard of, the light novel does say that it's possible, it's just only done by people who are really good at magic. I think in the long run, this really isn't going to make that much of a difference. Most people are probably going to treat it the same just because of how rare it is. Rudius goes back, this time with a bucket, and continues to practice without the incantations. That book is full of it. Magic power grows the more you use it, and magic works without incantations. I guess I can't believe everything I read. Basically, everyone is taught to cast magic using incantations, and that their magic won't grow. Both of these are false, but there's still some truth behind it. Kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Everyone is taught to do magic a certain way, so everyone does magic in that certain way. Rudius has the advantage of having memories from his past life, and having no knowledge of magic in this world, so he isn't stuck in the mold like everyone else is. He does remark that casting with incantations has its merits. It's easy to teach, it's easy to focus on during a fight. The light novel is more clear on this, but casting without the incantation takes a lot of concentration, and if during a fight something happens and you can't concentrate, then you can't cast magic. His mana pool increasing is also out of the ordinary, according to the book. He doesn't know if that's because he is special or if training at a young age is what caused the difference. The book says your mana pool doesn't change much, but if most people start training when they're a little older, it could be that that's more set in stone. I mean, most people aren't going to be training whenever they're 2 or 3 years old. Either way, he doesn't want to make the same mistakes that he did in his past life. He could very easily think that he is special, but he decides it's better to think that he's not and that he needs to put in the work to be good. If that hypothesis is right, there's only one thing to do. Train as much as I can while I'm still growing. Still, how do you make these fly? The spell fires out the window, hitting Paul in the process. I finally cracked how this incantation works. The spell goes create, set size, set firing speed, activate. I never set the firing speed, so it never went anywhere. So the first time he casts a spell, he says the incantation, but the spell doesn't go anywhere. So does that mean you have to set the firing speed, the size, and all of that, even with the incantation? At that point, what the fuck is saying out loud even doing? I'm kidding. I think with the incantation, you can skip over the creation and the activation of the spell. Basically, the start of the incantation is the creation of the spell, and then as soon as you're done saying everything, that's the activation. Which means if you use the incantation, you can skip over that part and focus on setting the size and the speed of the spell as you regurgitate the words. We get a little more info on the magic book and the light novel. It has a list of lower level attack spells of different elements. Like for instance, the water magic list has things like water ball and ice swords, and I'm not about to go over the entire list. Rudius focuses on the water ball spell, but he uses it to learn how to change the spell size and the spell speed and all of that. He does learn a few other elements except for fire, because he's in a wooden house and he's not stupid. One more thing before we continue. At this point in the story, Rudius is 3 years old, and in the light novel, we are just now getting the names of the adults. The light novel takes so long to give any names. I've got more magic power now, so it's time I tried intermediate magic. Rudius stands up, goes to the window, and recites the full incantation. Splash flow. The water continued to grow in front of him, almost to his own size. The water ball spell would shoot out like the water was being thrown, but this was completely different. The blast from the spell tore open a giant hole in the side of the house, and the water kept going in the sky before dissipating. Rudius is stunned at the results. The 3 adults rush in. Zenith picks up the book, and a smile appears on her face. Rudy, did you read this book out loud? I'm sorry. Did you hear that, dear? I knew our boy was a genius. Let's hire a magic tutor right now. Wait a minute. We promised that if it was a boy, he'd be a swordsman. Why not teach him magic in the morning and swordsmanship in the afternoon? And thus the plan was set. He would learn both magic and sword. And we also learned that Paul is a knight that's in charge of the town. He's supposed to be protecting everything, but there's not a whole lot that happens normally. So he ends up just practicing shirtless in front of all the ladies. The light novel does give a few more details. First, Zenith treats Rudy like he is a genius, and it reminds him of how his parents in his past life treated his younger brother. And it's not anything important to the story, but his younger brother was apparently the genius in his past life, not him. Second, Paul mentioned something important here. They hadn't taught Rudy how to read. How was he reading off the spells if he couldn't read yet? Now, Zenith is far more concerned with the fact that he's casting magic at a young age, so she just kind of pushes on right past that little comment. And now that everyone knows about his magic, next time we'll get a training arc. No, I'm just kidding. No, we won't. Anyway, that's it for now. See ya.